Hello and welcome to PPC Live The Podcast. I'm your host, Anu, the founder of PPC Live. And if you're used to hearing from PPC experts about how to ensure that we're keeping up with the ever-changing landscape, don't worry, you're still in the right place. Every week, I speak to a different PPC expert about their biggest F-up and just how they've turned things around, whether it's in terms of choosing clients or a mistake in the platform, whether you did put in a wrong bid, enter the wrong landing page, just put in like a wrong campaign budget, turned campaigns off on Black Friday, on big sales days. We talk about it all and how to get out of the pit of that, oh my God, I'm a failure moment. Yeah, we never leave things on a disappointed note. And because we speak to experts like, those who are head of agencies, people who are head of departments, people who are consultants and, heads of, just in general, that these are the kind of mistakes that did not hold up their career in any way. Today, I have the fantastic pleasure of speaking to Kirk Williams, who is someone who has been in the industry since like about 2009. So quite a long time. We really bonded over our Twitter times where the PPC chat community really got together to speak about our frustrations and really opened up about things that we're working for each other. So he's just such a good friend who I've also had the pleasure last year of meeting on the conference circuit, whether it was at SMX, HeroConf, Brighton SEO, etc. And he's going to be in the UK this year as well. So yay, I get to see him again. And this time, Kirk talks about, gives us his founder kind of knowledge of trying to get new clients on board. That is definitely an aspect of the PPC work and industry that I don't think gets talked of enough. We talk about a lot of the platform mistakes, but how about actually making sure that you're working with the right clients? So we get another story and Kirk pretty much gives you bullet point by bullet point questions that you should ask to ensure that you're going to work with the kind of client that doesn't keep you up at night for the wrong reasons. So yeah, let's go speak to Kirk. Hello, Kirk. Welcome to PPC Live, the podcast.
Hey, it is fantastic to see your face again. This time digitally. We saw each other last year, I think, Brighton or HeroConf.
HeroConf, and there was an SMX one that I feel you were at as well. I moderated you, and I think you're definitely in London because I know I was doing the moderating, and it was just such a joy, such a full circle moment. We won't go into too much depth into talking about like how we met because that was like the Twitter days when we had such a fantastic
RIP Twitter.
Right, we had
the lovely... OG Twitter before X took over and ruined everything. But anyway,
that's hey, thanks to Twitter, thanks that Twitter gave us that. It was good for what it was, and there are loads of other ways like podcasts, events, and things that you can build. We would build great relationships, and I was just so delighted when I was like, "Yay, Kirk is traveling again, going and coming back to our parts of the world." So. It's such a joy. For those who don't know, Kirk Williams is, as we've mentioned, someone that has been in the industry for many years. You're the owner of Zato. Did I say that right? Zato, right?
Yeah, you did. You got it right.
Lovely. They're a PPC search micro agency of experts and have worked in digital marketing since 2009. So way back. They offer a really great like 15-minute audits for accounts, and also Kirk is like an author of 2 fantastic books, Ponderings of a PPC Professional and Stop the Scale, and 2 fantastic books that it's one of those kind of books that I feel that's really nice with the fact that PPC is changing so much. We need some books that don't need updating every 6 months because there's always something changing, and those thought process that you share in the books, I actually really love that, and I'm like as relevant as when they were published, as relevant as they are today as well. Speaking engagements, he's an international speaker, has spoken at Brighton SEO, Learn Inbound, Dublin, Marketing Professionals, SMX, HeroConf, State of Search, many more. He continues to do it, and we continue to be, amazed by the wisdom he shares. Has written articles across so many like Search Engine Land, PPC Hero, Search Engine Journal, WordStream, etc. So you can hear loads of Kirk's knowledge that he shares even on LinkedIn, everywhere. It's really great to have someone who has built a great personal branding of just being open to share what you're learning. But yeah, in terms of what we're learning, we don't just learn from what we read on LinkedIn. We learn from our mistakes. And the best of us, as I've talked with a lot of the experts before, we get to the great heights that we are because of the mistakes that we've made. There's no success that doesn't come without its failings and comes out with its oops. There might be stories that you want to be like, okay, I'm going to just move on from that. So I'm really grateful that people are willing to recount some of those painful moments. Yeah, Kirk is going to do that with us today. So Kirk, please, what effort would you like to share with us today?
Yeah. So, I was thinking about this when, we chatted about recording, and I think probably since I like talking a lot about agency stuff, and especially like small agency things and that, I wanted to talk about primarily taking on clients that haven't been a good fit for us in the past.
Yeah.
And not solving that perfectly, but also taking some specific steps to solve that, rather than just kind of being helpless, like, well, oh, we misread that situation. I guess they didn't end up being a good client. I just think a lot of times there are ways to identify when you and a client are not going to be a great fit for each other, whether you're a consultant or an agency. And so, yeah, I thought of a few specific times I can think of with that, and some of the things we learned and steps we've taken. So.
Go ahead. What's the first example you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think overall, I would say oftentimes I see when we have taken on clients that aren't a good fit in the past, there's been some sort of external pressure that we have felt. Either it may be kind of this positive, like, ooh, we'd like to grow fast, so we ignore certain red warning signs.
Yeah.
Or it might be, maybe it's kind of like hey, we've been losing some clients, and kind of a key times. A lot of agencies, especially if we've been around for almost 14 years, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And so you also can point to certain times where then when you look back on it, you're like, oh, everyone in the industry was struggling. So you lose clients. Again, you feel some of that pressure, that economic pressure of, well, maybe we need to take clients on. And so, yeah, there have just been various instances where I look back and I'm like, man, we were on the call, we were in the account, we kind of knew, we ignored that thing that told us, I just don't know if we're going to be able to deliver what this client is expecting. And rather than lean into that and try to bring that out, or question it, or ask about it, or seek clarification, we may ignore that, and then pretty rapidly, as many of us know, that turns into a situation where it's problematic. And one of the things I want to talk about, like, I almost feel like I need to make a case for this actually is problematic, because sometimes I think people think, well, as long as we're growing, then yeah, you have to put up with a lot. But one of the things of taking on clients who are not a good fit for you, and I do want to be a little careful, because sometimes I hate using the words bad or good, because sometimes those can have ethical or moral things or not. So to define that, when I say good or bad, a big part of what I'm speaking of in this podcast episode is just like, they're not a good fit for you, or they're a bad fit for you. Okay, so that's how we'll define it, right?
Yes.
So like whatever it is that makes up my agency and that sort of thing that we've kind of figured out is like these clients who are a bad fit for us. And one of the reasons why it's just always a really bad idea that I've identified is it always ends up leaving our team emotionally taxed.
Yeah.
So we are not, it's not simply, there's also a time tax to that as well. Like you're just having more conversations, trying to solve the problem. So the client might have an issue, you talk about it, there's more friction. Friction requires more time to deal with things. It's also just like emotionally tiring, right? That's a toll that pulls away from your energy to be able to pour into the places where you can actually, positively impact things. And then also there is a level where it's financially taxing as well.
Of course.
Because again, when you're spending more time, you're just less profitable as an agency. Or there are certain times where it's pretty common for us, if I've taken on a client that ends up being a really bad fit right off the bat, there are times where I've just, in order to minimize our liability and risk, I've just given refunds, frankly, because I'm like, I would rather refund maybe in some cases a couple $1,000 personally, then deal with the potential for ongoing whatever. Let's have a clean break. And I'm going to call that like a learning tax for myself. So
Yeah.
that's happened for us in the past.
Yeah.
And so I think all of those things kind of help demonstrate like there really are times where someone's not a great fit and it actually has like cost to you and your team and your
Mm,
agency.
mm,
And it is really important to actually accept that and kind of lean into that and then actually think maybe we need to solve that. So, and there are
absolutely.
solutions for that.
Absolutely. Is it possible to let's dig deep dive into like let's say one of the clients. You don't have to, call out the
Sure.
name what brand it was, but like and just how that whole just post you won the client, you started working with them, and then like what were the specific red flags that you started picking up kind of thing
hmm
that led you to think this was not a good decision?
Yep. Yeah. So I think some of those would be, I'm thinking of one specifically where I think what I would say is I failed to take all of the red, yellow, beige, and all of, any non-green
Different
flag.
colors.
I failed to take all of those into account and put that into, oh, hey, this might not be a good client for us. So with this particular individual, there were significant like interpersonal things that I should
Oh,
have jumped into and leaned into more. So for instance, just like the way they would communicate with us on our discovery calls and emails was relatively like emotionally non-mature.
okay.
So
Okay.
so things like
Right.
so I'm trying to think of again, like without going into ultra specifics, but also to make it helpful enough where someone kind of understands, when you're trying to conflict resolve, even if it's
Yeah.
not a conflict, well, that might be part of it. When you're just trying to figure stuff out and all of a sudden it turns into a conflict, that really is more in the
Yeah.
case of, hey, we're just trying to figure out what to do with our business and pricing or whatever it might be, right?
Mm.
That's a flag I've started to realize is more red than I used to. So
Okay.
if someone so what I mean by that is if you're like talking in business and you're just communicating on some things and immediately if all of a sudden a client starts treating us as if we are not an individual business, with our own objectives
Yeah.
and fee structures and that sort of thing, and certainly we can maybe figure out pricing or that sort of thing, but there's also some level of co-respect that in my opinion is required between two
Yes.
individual free businesses. We have
Yes.
different ways of doing things. I might not like or whatever the way you do things, but I can respect that that's your business, right?
Yes.
When that turns into someone communicating in all of a sudden they're bringing like their own emotional defensiveness and stuff like that into
Yeah.
it or attacking, right? Treating
Yeah.
you as if you are not allowed to have your pricing be what it is or something like that.
Yeah.
That started to become more of a red flag for me because what that suggests, and that's like what had happened in this instance is one of those, what that suggests is that down the road, this person is not going to like this person's already showing that they don't respect our value.
Yeah.
They don't respect the fact that we believe we have value and that it
Yeah.
may be different than what they
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And increasingly for this guy specifically that I'm thinking of, I begin to realize, oh, he's one of these types that the world is there to serve him no matter what. And the only way you're going to benefit from this is if you happen to like temporarily align with serving him and you happen to improve, right?
Yeah.
Again, like I've just started to find out like relationships like that in business are not great
Not
as opposed to relationships where people are like, hey, we both have our own business objectives and
yeah.
we're both trying to make money, but we're also both trying to, we're trying to do our own thing. And
Yeah.
again, we can respect that you are trying to do that as well, but that you're a separate entity. And then
Yeah.
to me, respecting that doesn't mean that you can't hold your own values and boundaries, but it does
Yeah.
mean that you honor the others as well, even if
Yeah.
that means at some point you just are like, okay, well, hey, we're not going to be a great fit. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one example. I can pause there or I can, go with others.
No, go with others. Go with others, because I said this will not be necessarily a very long episode, but like I think let's be punchy with like what the great examples are, because but like just to have my own thoughts on that's for example definitely important if the person doesn't respect you, if they don't respect what your values are, and if it's not going to be two ways, and they're not going to understand that you bring even much more to the table, especially when they're talking about trying to employ your advertising kind of skills. If they don't see the value of you, it's going to be a downhill, because you're going to have to prove every dollar that you're working for, and it shouldn't be like that. And they're never going to see the point of even, like, I'd maybe trying to, because with Google and everything that changes, trying to explain to them about the other things that they might need to do, that's always going to be an uphill battle, won't it?
And
Yeah.
I think, and yes. And here's where I also distinguish and honor where a client is coming from. So I also believe there's a definite and important time of confidence building as well in
Yeah.
skills. And what I mean by that is, like, on one hand, I want them to identify and see and be excited about working with us and thinking that we have value. On the other hand, I completely respect the fact that if we've never seen each other, we took a month to figure out, and then they sign on with us. I also respect the fact that, like, we do need to show up and demonstrate that value and kind of and kind of prove it, right?
Yes.
So again, like, certainly there's a time of that, but also, and I think both of us are kind of tracking with the concern I'm trying to aim at, is there's someone saying, hey, it appears that there's some level of PPC value, and then also let's actually see when the rubber meets the road if they can actually show up, right?
Yeah.
And do well. And that's why for us, like, the first probably 2 to 3 months in an engagement are, like, insanely crucial, because it really is when it's most important and easiest to instill trust and move forward. The flip side is, man, if someone is treating you already as if I think there's just a lack. There's a difference between an assumption of you've communicated to us enough information that you can in the discovery phase for us to have some level of trust in your ability to do the work we're hiring you for.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that and just someone who is just unwilling to in any way trust you, but also still wants to hire you. So again, there's just kind of some level of, like, the more we talk, it just seems like you don't trust us at all or interested in our value, or maybe you just keep trying to, like, undercut our fees aggressively. So at some point, like, maybe you just need, like, who you're looking for isn't us, frankly.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. I think people
yeah.
like for agencies and consultants, you've got to be really careful about that, because it might just be someone is trying to look for someone that they can push over, because they'll be like, okay, let me just see if I can just push them, and they'll just accept whatever it is I want. People just want someone who'll be like, yes, we'll just say yes to whatever you're gonna say. And then actually, I think those are the kind of clients you need to go for. Bigger agencies who are willing to, well, they shouldn't, but take your nonsense, because maybe they have, like, certain way of working that could work out. But then that's when you end up with people in that agencies leaving, because they've just been put on accounts of and their contacts don't respect them, don't care, and they just want yes men. And you can see where that cycle has worked. It's, as you said at the beginning, where some agencies just feel that whole pressure of, like, okay, we've just lost a few clients, or, the economy is bad, so we just need to take whichever client is going, and we'll figure out whether they're a fit later. We'll just take their money and do as much work for them, make sure client services is in there and they're getting whatever they want. And it's not a relationship. It's just someone saying yes to a client because they've paid. And people have got to be careful with that. You got to be careful with that. For sure.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to our point we were discussing in the beginning too, which is just kind of fit for you, like fit for you and your values and your purpose and stuff like that. So Anthony Higman is a guy I've chatted with, and I just love him. He's online.
No,
he's like, he's kind of one of those, like, he's outspoken. He seems like a great dude.
Yeah.
And like, we've chatted about this because he's like, his focus, I believe, is lawyers, legal.
Yes,
and I don't take lawyers on as clients.
Okay.
That's just one of those, like, personally I've learned. And again, like, that's not saying there aren't awesome lawyers. I know great lawyers, blah, 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 all this stuff. I've just learned that as an industry, my skills are primarily in shopping. And then also part of this with, like, attorneys and lawyers that I've noticed as a trend is they oftentimes kind of have that mentality of the way that I get service from my agency is by almost like aggressively, untrustingly pushing, right?
Yeah.
Some people are just great at like handling that, honestly,
Yeah.
like better than me. And I
Yeah.
also think there's a personality thing there. I think there can be a thing where, you know, maybe they need someone who's just like a little bit more like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. And here's why, you
Yeah.
know, you big
Yeah.
idiot. And the lawyer's
Yeah.
like, you're an idiot. And then they're
Yeah.
like, we love each other. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't,
It's like mind games. The mind games of
I
it all.
love that you have that relationship and that you
Yeah.
like being in that mind game. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Midwesterner. I don't like that. So anyways, that is a legitimate, but that is worth calling out of example of what I mean by fit. And like, that is part of, I think, if you're a consultant or a small agency, you do need to kind of, all of that stuff plays into like who your target is and who's a great fit for you. And then like determining that, you know, beforehand.
Yeah.
There's another piece I think is really crucial to this as well, because I kind of talked about the, you know, just the relational side, but to me, there's also like not just the relational, because you can have maybe a person you talk to, you know, a prospect who's just a fantastic, you know, nice person, all this stuff. But then there's like the expectations of what PPC is or should be able to do for their account and whether you agree on that. That is also such a crucial part to fit.
Yeah.
And kind of what I mean by that. And so in this specific example, again, like there were red flags early on that I kind of looking back and, you know, as we went, I started to identify, oh, they're pushing, they and us did not fully agree on the role that Google Ads did and could play in their overall business growth.
Yeah.
And I can explain that a little more, but because of that, that's kind of the big picture way of saying it. Because of that, they had these expectations and goals with Google Ads that not just us, but really no agency could ever hit, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm starting to see that sort of thing way earlier on and even talk about that in the discovery process as like questions, just get that out. But that is such a crucial part to fit that I've started to learn with clients, because if you get someone who they are expecting you to do better in performance than Google Ads is able to do, then in that case, they're not a good fit for you, because again, you're just going to have endless conversations about performance failing. And then at some point they're like, hey, we love you, but also we're going to try this new agency because they promised us XYZ, and they're moving on anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it's almost like those two key parts are things I've learned more and more, like relationally, as well as like expectations and performance and marketing and all of that. Those two things are so important. And there's just very specific ways we've started identifying and leaning into those two things in our discovery process. And I just think overall, it's just really helped us start to avoid, you know, some of those like major things where, like in this instance, I've been sharing this guy, it was like 30 days, I think, that we both were basically like, hey, this is not working. And I was the one to say, hey, we're out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that's really important. I know that those points are very important to you. I remember you talking about it. I say talking about it because I did listen to your book as an audiobook, and I love that you narrated it. That was so lovely. And you talk about that. You talk about, especially when, a brand comes and they're not doing anything else in terms of advertising. They just expect PPC is going to be the one that does all the heavy lifting of the branding that they should have been doing, of the customer service. And they're like, guys, that's a big red flag that I love that you point out, because, be wary when brands are like, we're not doing anything else, but we want PPC to drive all the sales and drive all the revenues and everything. And it's really important to realize that PPC works in tandem with loads of your different channels that you're working with, and there's got to be a very great integrated strategy. PPC is not marketing. PPC should be part of your marketing strategy. It should not be the whole marketing strategy. It will never work if it's doing such heavy lifting. None of the channels will. So it's not even like a PPC flaw. It's like you need multiple channels working together for things to actually work well.
For a long-term sustainable business, I do think, as we know, and sometimes people are hung up on the fact they're like, well, I've been working with my, company for 2 years and we're only PPC and things are going great. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, so you're a 2-year-old business, leaning into Google Ads. Again, we're talking more long-term, healthy, actual business longevity and growth. Diversification is just a fact of life,
It really is.
So,
I'd actually argue what people actually think when they say that, okay, we're only doing PPC. If you actually sat down and they're saying it's working, if you sat down with them, you'll realize there's other things going on that they are not even aware is going on that is helping PPC. Like, it's a hill I will die on. PPC on its own cannot work. Genuinely feel that. Like, because right now I'm not necessarily with PPC Live and our branding. We're doing social media, but I'm also doing newsletter, word of mouth. Certain things are working that maybe I'm not paying for. That's not like a paid channel, but are working all together to ensure ensure that actually marketing and growth happens. But yeah, this has been a fantastic chat already. Honestly, we've filled that time with like some really great knowledge, in my opinion. But just before we go into like our last few questions, like I'd like you to see if you have any like ideas or like what you've seen in terms of what other agencies might have been doing wrong, or just what the industry is still getting wrong that you feel like you can't believe, like in your 15 years of doing digital advertising, that's a mistake that you saw in year 5 and it's still happening in year 15. Are there some mistakes that are just painfully reoccurring?
Do you mind if I take a few minutes and just walk through a few questions to solve some of these problems first that I talked about with the client?
Of course.
Can I do that real quick? Because I
Okay.
think this is actually kind of a crucial, like a period at the end of the sentence of the client's problems we were talking about, or of like the discovery identification. To me, just as a quick, like if someone's like, okay, it sounds great, I would like to, I would like to determine how clients are a good fit, and then maybe they just aren't really quite sure how to do that.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that we have done, and I'll just share some of these questions, is we've started asking the right questions on our discovery form and in our calls. And here's what you're trying to get at. And I think this is kind of the crucial piece that will like put home some of this. I think what you're trying to get at is like, hey, there's a reason you're contacting us as an agency. There always is, right?
Yeah.
And so like, what is that? Like, let's really find, and sometimes they don't even know that. And so sometimes it's just like, you're trying to help them uncover what is their main problem. And then we need to agree on the way that PPC can solve that main problem.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, again, like you're starting the relationship poorly right then and there. So if you're just focused on answering that, and then there are lots of little questions that you ask to start helping determine that as well, especially if they don't know. We just like to ask questions in terms of like getting an understanding of, okay, how are they viewing the relationship between a business's scaling possibility and efficiency? So if they're asking if they think their main problem is scaling, do they also understand there's going to be an efficiency loss, a ROAS dip with that? Blah, blah, blah. You're trying to understand that sort of stuff. We talked about this, but what are other ways of driving demand in other marketing channels? How do you see the role of Google Ads playing into your marketing strategy? Some of these are open-ended questions purposefully, because what they do is you ask them, and then it allows you to start actually getting at more of the heart of again, what that problem is and whether or not PPC can solve that. And then relationally, just some of the questions I love asking is, why are you unhappy with your existing agency or employee and looking for a change? Because again, they are. But then I like asking, what's something you like about them? And the reason I like asking that is because it kind of helps you. What you're doing in discovery as an agency is you are way more of a detective than maybe you think you are.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to really uncover, again, like who is this person I'm going to partner with?
Yes.
And what you need to know is, does this person just have unrealistic expectations on agencies, or is there an actual issue? So if what's something you like about them, if they can't come up with anything, maybe the person they're working with before actually is like the worst PPCer of all time. And maybe they're legitimately, that's fair. Or maybe like that's a little hint that you add to the database that over time on this client, you start to piece all this together where you can determine it, and at least you get to walk in with eyes wide open. So I think that's kind of how I would say is how we've begun solving the client fit issue is just by like taking the time to ask the right questions and dig in with curiosity in the
Yeah.
discovery process. So then we all and the funny thing is, and I'll close with this, the funny thing is like this will actually help your sales
Of course.
because you genuinely are trying to understand them. And I don't know how to say it other than they are aware of that. They can sense that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like if you're doing this correctly, by the time you get there, you know, there's other factors like pricing and stuff that for sure weigh into this at some point.
Yeah.
But by the time you get there, if all of you are like, hey, this seems like we're all on the same page and a good fit, it's just way easier to then make that final sale when
Close.
you're already there, right? And you get there with those right questions and stuff like that. So all that to say, to me, that's kind of how you actually then move from, hey, how do I even tell if client's a good fit, to actually solving that.
Yeah, amazing. I'm for anyone that pitches for clients, you've just given people like a playbook there. And thankfully this podcast there's going to be the transcript, there's going to be like the show notes, so you'll see as a bullet point all those like questions that Kirk has advised that we should be asking. And I think that goes for consultants. If you're a solo, or you're a freelancer, you're part of an agency, you're a detective. You want to really figure out what the relationship with this client is going to be and not just go, have dollar signs in your eyes because potential client has decided to, call you up and have a meeting with you. It's really important that you go through this for your mental health, for our mental health. There's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on in the world without client's relationship being another thing on the list. That is the one thing that is pulling our energy down. It's pulling our motivation down. So yeah, these kind of discovery questions are absolutely critical and important. You know what, Kirk, you've given us so much. You've given us more than I could ask for. So we're gonna do a roundup at this stage and just go to our lovely final question, that if your PPC career were a movie, what would the title be?
So I have to admit, I didn't think very long about this one, so I'm not sure if I have a great answer, but we were joking a little bit about, it's kind of difficult for me not to say Star Wars.
I
Not
literally
sure
was
who
like,
I
it
would,
can't be Star Wars.
not sure who I would be at this point. Yeah. Maybe like as a small agency, and like what a shocker, but maybe I'm like the rebellion as the small agency fighting against like the overall unhealthy agency culture that's out there,
Yes,
burning everyone out. So yeah, I like that.
absolutely. No, definitely.
Yeah, somehow I ended up being the good guy in that. I don't know how that happened.
Of course you're the good guy. You've always been the good guy. Always been someone that if I just go into like Kirk's DMs and be like, Kirk, a client has asked me about this. What should I do? You've always been great and responsive. And, that's the kind of people we need in this industry. I also even sometimes in the previous episodes talk about, the fact that people don't share mistakes. People are always like, everything is going well. I've just, closed the deal of the $1 million dollar revenue XYZ. And I'm, running this kind of huge account, $10 million accounts, and everybody's just talking about how big spends that they're doing. And sometimes you need people who are fighting for the little guys as well, the smaller agencies who actually care about who they're working with. So yeah, no, definitely. I always love like checking what you're talking about, where you're going to be speaking. Are you going to be doing any international events again this year?
Yeah, so I'm hitting. Gosh, I'm doing Munich, Amsterdam, Brighton, and Manchester.
Oh my God, you're going to be Manchester! That is
Yeah, performance MCR with Charlie.
Yes!
Charlie's
Oh
awesome.
my God, Charlie is awesome.
Are you gonna be
I
there?
love that. I probably will. I feel like I've got to
nice.
now. I wasn't sure,
Yeah,
but oh my
you
God.
got to.
Oh, bless.
Yeah,
And
I
I'll
don't
see you
even
in
know.
Munich as well.
I think I'm allowed to say that. I don't think Charlie's announced it yet, but I don't know if it was like a super secret thing. But yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, that's amazing.
Sounds like a fun conference. So
It is a fun conference. Oh, I'm happy for her. Like, yeah, she's announcing like there's gonna be a few American folks. There's someone else I know, the keynote speaker. She's not announced it yet, and I do know who it's gonna be. We're not gonna say the name because I bet you know as well.
yeah, probably.
But yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, you guys should come to that as well. It's going to be a very fun one. So yeah, those are the names that they're going to be at. So if you're going to be any of in those places, yeah, I'm sure Kirk would love to hear from you and just say hello. And yeah, we'll have a good chat. Thank you so much for joining us, Kirk. And yeah, we'd love to check out, what you're doing. Kirk is on LinkedIn. Like, you're regular on that now, don't you? Aren't you?
I'm trying. I kind of hate it there, and also like, yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. But we try because, yeah, the people want to hear from you. So hopefully we'll continue to hear from you. But yeah, thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, catch you on the conference trail.
Yeah, thank you. Good chatting.
Thank you so much, Kirk, for that really great, not just honest, but, very insightful insight as to when you speak to clients and the importance of ensuring that you're vetting the clients that your team is going to work with. Because I know the person who's going to be like, the client, head of client relationship is not necessarily the person that's going to be the day-to-day, but it's really important that you keep those people that are the day-to-day in your mind when you're having those conversations with the clients. Those questions like, why did you like your past agency? Why didn't you like? Why didn't it work out? Because as much as it might be a case of that agency was the wrong fit, they didn't do well. It might just be a case of you're approaching paid search in your marketing mix totally wrong, or that client, that possible brand is approaching a paid search really wrong in terms of your marketing mix. So yeah, those conversations that you have before you onboard a client, before the sales locks it in and contracts are exchanged, those conversations are very vital and very important. So make sure you do them well so that, yeah, you have a really great and long-lasting relationship with your clients, because those are the best, right? So yeah, so for more information on the full transcript of that conversation, yeah, please go to podcast.ppc.live, where you'll get like the structured outline of those questions that Kirk gave us, so that you can pretty much just copy and paste it into your conversation notes when you're having those conversations with your first clients. Yeah, PPC Live, we've got our first event happening on February 5th. So PPC Live 19, we've got Kat Sale and Dave Alexander and Niels Rugeman all ready to come and deliver fantastic talks. That is going to be followed by great networking, great panel talks, great Ricky Lake style conversations where anyone can answer a question, can ask or answer a question, regardless of whether you're on the panel, whether you're in the audience. Let's have a great PPC Live team meeting, shall we? So yeah, go to ppc.live for your tickets. Sales are still going on. Like, yeah, as I'm recording, it's only 10 days left. By the time you're listening to this, it might be 8 or 9 or 7 days left till the next event. But whichever way you're at, you'll be able, whichever date you're out from, as long as it's before 5 p.m. on the 5th of February, you can still get a ticket. So don't miss out on that. And before I leave you, I'm also delighted to share that I'm taking on coaching clients. So just go to themarketinganu.com to book some time for a discovery call to just help you with your confidence issues, trying to get that pay rise, trying to get that new job, trying to break into the industry. I'd love to help you with that. So yeah, you can book a free discovery call with me so that we can chat and figure out exactly what it is that you need. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I look forward to bringing more PPC F-ups and triumphs next week. Thank you very much. Bye.